conversation. I was there for the unclean spirits conversation.
Yes. I think we just touched on the idea that there is no capital S Satan that's personified as most of us have understood it in the New Testament. Mm-hmm. The closest we come is this capital A accuser that doesn't have a name.
Mine says Satan.
Is it capital S? Right? So from what I understand, there wasn't an understanding in the first century Christians that there was a person named Satan. There was the Satan, and it was a the, and it was a little s, and it means the accuser. It's like the one who tries to deceive you, the one who makes you second guess yourself or somebody else's teaching, the one who tries to keep you from doing what's right, from believing in truth. But it's not personified. It's not a guy. Is that, Rachel?
The inner critic.
So many ways to understand that. Yeah, so the NIV says Satan, and so does the NRSV. I'm going to try the Inclusive Bible, which is, I don't know, it's an interesting translation. I have yet to hear from a bunch of academics what they think of it. But one of the good things about it is that it takes away a lot of the male pronouns when they're not necessary to the story. And it goes back to the original languages and takes a lot of the gender-specific American translations out of it. So let me see. Yeah, no, it says Satan as well. So there you go.
But no matter what, the audience wouldn't have understood it to be a personified red horned dude who is out to get you.
I know a dude like that.
So here's something from the commentary. Since failure to receive the word is attributed to Satan, Mark later has Jesus call Peter Satan in Mark 8:33 when he protests Jesus' word about future suffering. So does somebody want to flip to Mark 8:33 real quick?
Does that get behind me, Satan?
That's what I'm assuming it is.
So that would take a lot of personification of a horned devil character out of it. Mm-hmm. If Jesus is using that word.
Get behind me, Satan. For your mind is not set on God's will or God's values and purposes, but on what pleases man.
Yeah, you don't want to suffer. And I understand that. But if suffering is going to happen, then you need to allow that that's going to happen, even though you don't like it. And if you're going to argue and say it's not going to happen, that's incorrect, right? Let me look up Satan in another book. No Satan in that book as well. So this is a textbook on the New Testament from school. I'm now looking up the accuser to see if that comes up, because, you know, you'd think this book would cover it. And it doesn't. Nothing on Satan. Wow. All right, well, I have more studying to do.
JewsLearning.com. Satan appears in the Bible, was discussed by the rabbis of the Talmud, and is explored in detail in Jewish mysticism or the Kabbalah. In Hebrew, the term Satan is usually translated as opponent or adversary, and he is often understood to represent the sinful impulse, or Yetzer Hara, or more generally, the forces that prevent human beings from submitting to divine will. He is sometimes regarded as a heavenly prosecutor or accuser, a view given expression in the book of Job, where Satan encourages God to test his servant. And then there is a lot more.
Okay.
But definitely less of like a evil opponent who's out to keep Christians from being Christians. Less like letters to Wormwood.
Right. So to these first century Christians, and when Jesus was walking and he was teaching people, the understanding of what the Messiah would do, what the Messiah would, or at least this is what they expected of the Messiah, was that he would restore Israel to greatness and thus overthrow Rome, right? And Jesus continually in Mark is being portrayed as not that. This is not that. If he was that, the Pharisees would have loved him. But he's not that. And that's part of what Jesus is up against all the time, is this misunderstanding of who he is and what he's come to do. And so, like in another story, some of you may have heard, or all of you may have heard, like Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane and they come to arrest him and Peter pulls out a sword and Jesus says, no, that's not what this is about. Like, I'm here to suffer and die, and I know you don't get it, but that's what I'm here for. And over and over he says, I'm here to suffer. But they didn't want their Messiah to be a suffering Messiah. That completely blew apart their whole idea of what Messiah meant. If you're here to save us, you're here to save us from the suffering. So there should be no more suffering. So in 8:33, when Peter says, no, you're not going to suffer, I'll die with you before that happens, before I let anybody hurt you, Jesus says, get behind me, because like Satan, you don't get it. That's counter to what I'm here for. I'm here to suffer, and you're just going to have to figure that out. Right? And so that's part of this, the mystery of Mark, this constant where Jesus says, don't tell anybody that, is because he is presented as the Messiah who fulfills the prophecies, but not like in Matthew, where Matthew uses, genealogies and stories from the Hebrew scriptures over and over and over again to prove who Jesus is. Jesus in Mark keeps saying, you don't understand what Messiah means. You don't understand what the Son of God and the Son of Man have come to do. You have it all wrong. And the ones who do start to perceive and start to understand it, he's like, well, don't tell anybody, because they can't get it. They're expecting a different kind of Messiah. They don't have ears to hear what I have to say. They're expecting somebody completely different. And they're rejecting me because I don't fit the model of what they want, right? And I definitely can see that happening in modern day American Christianity, where they want to present Jesus in a certain way because he serves their purpose. And I think for those of us who want to have ears to hear, we need to be willing to see and hear a Jesus who doesn't look like how he has been portrayed for political gain in this country. And it's hard because it's hard for us to tease apart those two things. We don't know who Jesus really was except for what we read. And the people who are portraying him differently are reading and interpreting the same text we are. So again and again, like I always say this, I know you guys are sick of it, but like that's why I just want to focus on what the thing says as best as we can, to keep going back to the scripture itself, because our American cultural Christianity especially from an evangelical viewpoint as opposed to the Catholic viewpoint, has modeled a Jesus in a particular form that may, I would advocate, may not portray accurately just how unusual the love of God looks.
I would take that may out of that sentence. Pretty sure we all kind of know that.
Yeah.
I love this. I love this. Because, like, if Mark's whole purpose is saying, like, oh, Jesus is our Messiah and he doesn't look like what you think a Messiah should look like what the Messiah has not come to do is to, like, attack people with a sword or lead an army. But what Jesus is here to do, what, like, the important things that Jesus is like, I want you to stay around for this, is Jesus creating teachers who can be taught. Like, that's the messianic purpose, is to prepare people who are open-hearted and to prepare people who are soft-hearted. Because, like, that's a pattern that we also see in Old Testament scriptures, is, like, people who are failures of leaders cannot, like, receive criticism and cannot receive teaching. And Jesus is modeling his teaching in such a way that it selects people who can be taught and who are willing to learn. And even though he's annoyed, he is, like, really committed to making sure that they get it.
I was talking to somebody not that long ago, and they were saying that, you know, they were discussing the theology of the second coming. Well, but they were concerned for their salvation as a gay Christian. And they were concerned that if they decided, because of things that people like me say, that homosexuality is not a sin, and you can be both self-avowed practicing homosexual, and that's a good Methodist saying, and gay, and a Christian is fine. Like, it's not about salvation. That they were afraid that if they lived into that possible truth, that when Jesus came back, they wouldn't be saved. They'd be rejected. And and so they were talking to me about, you know, that. And I said, well, how will you know when Jesus comes back? And they said, well, he's going to come back riding on a horse, you know, through the clouds, and, you know, kind of gave me the Left Behind book spiel on what the second coming would look like. And I said, well, how do you know it's going to look like that? And they said, well, it's very clearly written in the scriptures that that's what it's going to look like. And I said, well, wasn't it very clearly written in the scriptures what the Messiah would look like? And they were like, well, yeah, there's hundreds of prophetic texts in the Jewish Bible, in the Old Testament, that say, you know, this is what's going to happen when the Messiah comes, right? The book of Amos is a great example. You know, when the day of the Lord comes, it will look just like this, right? And I said, okay, so if that's your understanding of prophetic text, right, why did they all miss it? Why did the people who were in charge of teaching those texts, the scribes, and the people who were in charge of temple worship, why were they the ones who completely missed the Messiah when he showed up? So, and I only say that to say that when we get it so perfect in our minds that it's going to happen just like this, I think we should all just get really worried that we're on the wrong track, because over and over, it's been the first 3 chapters here of Mark and a little bit of chapter 4, Jesus already said, like, you don't get it. You were looking for A, and I look like Y. You know, and they're so far apart, like, you're completely missing the point. And he hasn't even died yet, which really shot the point, right? That really messed everybody up. They were like, well, he couldn't be the Messiah, he just died. Our Messiah can't die, right? That's why they all went into hiding in the first chapter of Acts. Because, well, now who is he? You know? So I think one of the hardest things about what we call progressive Christianity is that we try to hold all these things in tension, and we try to leave so many things ambiguous and be okay with it. Especially when we were taught in certain church structures and certain denominations that the only way to be Christian was to know for a fact that it's ABC and have it locked down as truth.
Be able to argue it.
Right? And if you can't, then you don't know your Bible good enough, because you should be able to go like to all the proof texts and say, well, it says this, therefore that. And over when I hear Jesus saying, like, for him who has ears to hear, like it raises that idea that uncertainty might actually be okay. That there's a way to be faithful and a way to believe and not know for a fact that A, B, and C are correct. And that it has to be A, B, C or it's not right. But wow, that's not a comfortable place for a lot of us. I always used to say, like, I'm looking at my screen right now, my Zoom screen, right? And I'm highlighted because I'm the speaker, right? And I want my Christianity like that. Jan, here's the highlighted box. You're good to go. Those other three down there, they're not, you know what I mean? Like, paint it for me, write it down. Give me the 10 Commandments for Christians. Like, wouldn't that be great? Like, to just, like, as long as I got 8, I can just check them off. I'm good to go. And it, like, the further I get into this Christianity thing, the less I know.
Jesus is annoyed because he's like, I want you guys to think critically, please. I'm just begging you, like, have an original thought.
It's just really hard. But over and over again, what I hear is that there is something to believe in, that there is an ultimate truth. The ultimate truth is love and unity of all people. This very diverse group that Jesus calls the 12, that he didn't call a unified group from one demographic. There were women in the group, whether or not any modern day American evangelicals want to admit it. There were women in the group. The first people to see the empty tomb were women. The first people to speak the good news that he is risen were women. That's not a comfortable truth for evangelicals these days, right? But it's there in the text. They're working really hard to deny it, but I don't know where I'm going with any of this, except when it comes to this idea of Satan, which is where I started this little thing I'm on here, I think we also have to be able to hold that in tension, or it can get really, really weird and scary and dangerous. If there's a guy running around with horns and a pitchfork, like, that's an effective weapon of fear for church leadership to use to keep us in line. But I don't see Jesus portraying that person in his stories. I think it's better understood as the accuser, as that, what were you saying, Rachel, that, the
Prosecutor.
The what?
Internal critic.
Internal critic. The one who wants to steal our faith from us.
This is kind of a weird thing, but I've been following this, Idahoans Against Sex Trafficking site on Facebook, and they're talking a lot about rituals and whatever, satanic cults and stuff. But even forms of Satanism don't follow Satan as an individual. Like, even Satanists know there's not a Satan, but apparently Christians forgot about that. So,
well, that's fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to have a bad guy, because you can blame everything on the bad guy instead of having to do actual work to, better yourself or work on things or process through stuff. Because if you just have a black and white, the world is simple. Versus if you actually recognize, oh, it's a lot more complex than that. And so probably one of the, like, if you really think about it, one of the greatest things of propaganda that's happened is changing and creating this Satan character as the great tempter, because everything is then referred to as, oh, Satan is tempting me. Not my own thoughts are going to that place. It's like, no, Satan is doing that.
Yeah. And
Also, oh, sorry, Jen.
you're probably going to say what I'm going to say, so go ahead.
It is a really useful tool for stamping down any dissent. Because one, if anyone says that it's disagrees with the pastor, disagrees with the teaching, or says like, actually, I feel uncomfortable with this, or I really think our church needs to like think about changing this policy or having a clear stance, those are the lies of Satan. And so you need to erase this from your heart. And Jamie Lee Finch talks about this, is that sometimes our bodies know when things are like not okay, even when our brains don't know that it's not okay. And like the amount of people that get like really, really, really like ill right before going on a missions trip, or right before like starting something that they've been told that God has like called them to. And it's just like, oh, it's just the work of the devil. Oh, Satan just wants to like stop me from doing God's work. And like maybe, but also like maybe part of you knows that this isn't going to be good for you.
I mean, yeah, I mean, there could be lots of reasons why those things happen. I mean, the added stress of stepping out like that when we know as, like, smart people, that, our minds affect our bodies and our bodies affect our spirits, and the health of the one affects the health of the other. And so, yeah, if you're really stepping out into unknown territory and going on a mission trip to a foreign country, and, maybe you don't like, some of the other people that are going with you. I've been on lots of mission trips. People you don't like go too. It's stressful. So yeah, you can get sick the day before and it's got nothing to do with Satan.
And it's like, you just got to power through it. You just got to trust in God, instead of like, oh, I should listen to my body. And like, I need to figure out what's going on. Because what might actually be going on is that you have developed a panic disorder, or what's actually going on is that you don't feel settled, or what's actually going on is that like, you can't actually stand the leader, because there's a really good reason.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right.
But no, just trust God.
Power through. Power of God will sustain you. Or, you'll end up in the hospital, but, whatever. So also, I just want to call us to mind the book of James, because it's my favorite. And this idea that the devil made me do it, counteracted by this teaching from James 1:12. Blessed are those who persevere under trial. Once their worth has been proven, they will receive the crown of life that God has promised to the faithful. No one who is tempted is free to say, I am tempted by God. God, who is not touched by evil, tempts no one. Those who are tempted are attracted and seduced by their own wrong desires. Then the desires conceive and give birth to sin, and when that sin is full grown, it too has a child, death. So here's this idea, and again, this is framed by a story about how the rich are just as blessed or not blessed as the poor, and that rains come and the rich people get rained on the same as the poor people get rained on. You can't just say, for one thing, you can't say God is tempting me to evil, because that is not logical. God isn't evil, so God can't tempt you with evil. And then this idea that, let's stop making excuses and calling it the devil. Let's just say well, maybe the reason I cheated on my taxes was because I really just want to keep that money for myself because, I want a new shiny thing. Let's just admit that sometimes we're tempted by our own evil desires, and that sometimes those taken to their fullest extreme harm other people and actually can cause death. And I don't know, I'm going to go with, if Americans just shared their wealth a little bit more, people in other places in the world would be starving, but that's just me. So, and I don't mean that to accuse any of us individually so much as the sort of globalized lack of the sharing of wealth that happens, you know. So again,
and people in America, and people in America would not be.
you know, people in America are letting people in America starve, let alone people all over the world. So again, that this idea that, you know, God is love and God created humanity should teach us that we are all one, we're all unified, and that the harming of one, you know, anywhere, we should recognize as like harming somebody we love. So it's hard. This is big stuff. Okay. What have I missed? Last words, last thoughts.
I think it was nice to go through this because it's, I guess almost the word, it was tainted before. Because like it was always going through this chapter, it was always about this focus on like, you have to be going out and evangelizing, or these are just how people are, so don't associate with them, and just everything else. And it doesn't really give a good focus on really look at yourself, sort of throwing it out there. But it's also like the good soil can be so many different things, but it's also an emphasis on almost self-care at the same time, which I've not heard any of those, but they're definitely there in the text.
Yeah. You know, it also occurs to me that these different soils that produce 30, 60, and 100-fold could be different areas of ministry. And we're not all called to do all things. So Rachel's work, you know, hands-on with our less than properly housed population versus Misha's, you know, work for LGBTQ people of faith are very diverse. You know, they don't necessarily touch, except for in a couple of places, and yet they're both fruitful ministries. And we can't all be great at all things, and that's okay. I know that one of my weaknesses is having any kind of eco-focus. I mean, I know I suck at that. You know, I just call myself out on that. And I can do a better job of remembering to recycle and remembering to not use plastic and remember, you know, like, I'm just not like super great at that. And, oh, well, you know what I mean? Like, try to give myself a pass, and we don't all have to produce 100-fold of all things. Like, you know, let's be gentle with ourselves and like do the best we can, and recognize that there's different areas of ministry and different crops grow at different times, and it's all okay. And this doesn't have to be a text about judgment. Not, you know, this text shouldn't be about guilt, you know? Yeah, and again, that's why I love it. I just want to get, like, I do use commentaries and I do use other, you know, lesson plans and things, but like when we read it, I think every time I read it, I get something new out of it. And, you know, I don't want to skip stuff because it's like, oh, we've all heard that before. You know? So I think we're going to quit here. Again, I have no sense of the time, but I think it's running out. We're going to quit here at Mark 20, and we'll talk about lamps and lampstands next week. Sarah, you and Jane are moving. Is next week going to be a rough time to meet? Yes.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How about you two? Do you want to take a planned week off as opposed to when Jan's internet goes down, or? Yeah. How about we talk about the news of the people here? I got a new job, and super stoked about it. But the last, I have gone in a few times, but to do something other than my actual job, which has just been call all of the people who, for various reasons, haven't responded to our request for information about whether or not they intend to send their children to school this year. My new job is to be the attendance secretary at my school. So for now on, I get to say, Johnny missed class. And that will be my job going forward. And I start on the 1st. So that will be my official day at work. And then Janine's just found out yesterday that she is expected back on the 1st. So she's been living through a lot of uncertainty because if the kids aren't coming back, do we need a behaviorist? Because that's what she does, an interventionist. But yes, all of the paraeducators are being asked to come back. So you can keep her in mind because there's still a lot of ambiguity about her job and now the new knee. So what's going on in your guys' life?
Classes started, so I have back-to-back classes today. So they started at 2 and ended at 7:30. So then this, because of here, started at 8 instead of 6. So it's been a long day.
Wow. Now, is that online?
Hmm.
Please don't go in
Taking the
public.
time to be here. Oh my gosh.
You
Yeah.
guys know about Tuscaloosa, right? They have 500 cases on
Over
campus.
that, it's like 560, but it's probably a lot more soon.
Yeah.
So, and I don't, like, that number's not going to go down.
No.
There's going to be,
Hose you down with bleach from here. Like, don't
well, the nice thing is all of my classes are not on campus. They're all virtual. So I haven't gone to campus. I avoid campus. The only bad news is pumpkin spice came out today or yesterday, and I want to go get some, but all the Starbuckses are around campus. So
That's a conundrum.
it is.
You
It
just gotta
is.
wake up before everybody
They're right next to the
On a Sunday.
sororities.
on a Sunday. So
It won't matter.
at like
it won't
6
matter.
a.m.
Won't matter. I've tried.
Sarah will send you one of hers
Okay.
because she's generous like that.
Okay.
Might
They'll
be
probably
Won't be
they'll probably
good by the
taste.
time he gets there.
Yeah, probably not.
but-
But other than that, that's pretty much everything. It's just school is happening, so everything's going back to figuring that out and getting back into that, I guess, mental space. It's like, oh, I have lots of readings. I have all these other stuff that I need to do. It's like, okay, I got to make sure I devote time to it. So that's about it for me.
Okay. Anybody else? What's going on?
So wait, where are you guys moving to?
I'm moving in with Jane.
Ah, exciting.
Yep.
Where does Jane live in or around
In-
Spokane?
In Hayden, Idaho.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
so not in and around Spokane.
Well, I mean, it's close
It's
enough,
close. Yeah, it's Hayden. It's
Yeah,
really not
but-
that far.
but not close enough.
But
Yeah,
it's like 20, 30 minutes to downtown.
more like an hour.
Really?
Yeah,
Well, it's
45
our-
minutes.
So
Yeah.
way
You got to
up on
drive
the-
faster.
Mhm. Well, I tried to.
She's going to get a private plane and just start doing hops.
Well,
So
not after
quick.
today.
I have begun the process. I had a really, really good conversation with my friend Dan, who I've been supporting his ministry since I graduated from college, and I had a really good conversation with him, and he was like, Rachel, no matter what I'm doing, 13% of everything I fundraise is going to national. So you should divest. He told me, you need to divest.
That's
So-
the university guy, right?
Yeah, so I am beginning the process of letting all of my friends who have been sporting since I graduated, that I'm not going to be supporting them anymore, which feels daunting, but also really, really good. It's like, well, you're the ones who decided to work for a homophobic organization and then ask your gay friend for money. So, and I know that there's more nuance than that, but
most of them have been like pretty understanding of like, yeah, that makes sense. It was weird that you were willing to support me in the first place. So that feels really good.
That's hard though. I appreciate you walking that path, but I'm reminded of the when the rubber hits the road metaphor. That's still a hard, stinky place to be sometimes.
But I think closure feels really good. I'm like, that part of my life is really done.
That's good.
Which also, I'm gonna need the money because I just had to buy my car insurance today. And I was like, I got paid on Sunday, and I was like, wow, I have money. And then I had to buy my 6 months of car insurance, and I'm like, I don't have any money.
Mhm.
That 6 months in advance thing is really wild. Yeah. Hopefully they'll be able to turn you over to a monthly thing at some point.
It's less expensive to do 6 months.
That's true. That's true. In final news, Pastor Heather Tadlock of Bethany Presbyterian, which is one of the very more affirming churches in Spokane, has asked me to preach for her, please. Yoo-hoo! Online. They do Facebook Live Church. And so September 6th, so Sunday after next, I will be covering for her. They do about a 30-minute service, which includes an opening interactive call to worship kind of thing, and then prayers to the people in a sermon, and then closing prayers. So I will put that link up on our group. So that'll be fun to prepare for a sermon, a very short sermon, 15 minutes. So it's good. It's happy. Yep. Janine, you got anything else? No. Janine's doing the dishes. Okay. Love you.
Love you.
Blessed week.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.